So we have some bad news. We were on the call with Brad yesterday. He's really excited to do this. He woke up this morning with a personal emergency, and we basically at this point just wish him the best of health and that everything works out for him. We do have Laura Monroe. So Laura is the global head of community news at Inman News. She's basically Brad's right hand. She's a NAR Reach mentor. She's a former head of industry and partnerships at Real Estate Webmasters. She's the former VP of marketing and strategy at RealSatisfied, and she previously was with Keller Williams. So welcome. Let me unmute you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm sorry I'm not Brad, but I'm happy to fill in.
We appreciate you being here. Oh, hold on. I have a bad connection here now.
Here, I'm going to put in my headphones just in case.
There we go. Too many devices running. So anyway, thank you very much for being on the call today. So we're looking at we're trying to take stock of what's going on. Every day we wake up and the world is a little bit different. United States just passed its 10,000th case of coronavirus. Talks in United States about $1 trillion worth of bailout money. Canada's talking about $82 billion worth of aid and support packages for people as we go. I was looking at our statistics on our real estate board side, and listings and sales have come off noticeably as well. And so we're wondering, if you can tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, we know you do a lot of outreach and communication with brokers, agents around the country. Can you give us a sense of what's going on from your point of view and what you're seeing?
Sure. So I'm here in California, which, we sort of locked down everything as a state about 3 days ago. So for us, that means shelter in place. We can only go to the, grocery store, gas stations, different things like that. Most of the brands and corporations, real estate corporations, have done the same. They've encouraged all of their agents and staff to go ahead and do the same. So that also means that open houses have now been closed. As of 3 days ago, many companies were still had open houses. We're still doing that. So they've shifted into doing more virtual things. And as it changes day by day, but I think the big message for us is that what's happening in California is happening, and in New York and in Washington State is happening much faster than it is in Florida and some of the states in the Midwest. So really regionally, it's been hard to keep track of what's happening, sort of on the ground. So it's a lot of information at the same time, just of how quickly things are changing. So I think for here in California specifically, there is sort of this sense of some of our county recorders, so transactions that are currently in play right now, in some areas of the state are having trouble getting to close because a lot of the county recorders offices and things like that needed for the transactions are not doing things virtually. They've closed the offices down. That's not everywhere, but certainly I think the important thing is that regionally it's happening very differently. So it's all hard to keep track of. Yeah.
Laura, so do you get a sense that the counties and areas that are not fully electronic are looking to go that way as emergency measures, or are they declaring it non-essential and they're going to let it ride and they're going to tell everyone, we'll get to you later?
I think most of them are working to go virtually as soon as possible. I think it was Santa Clara County that rated it more as a non-essential, but I think they're having to quickly backtrack on that. I think as we see the counties go into the emergency measures, then we can get more of the authorities involved in actually making sure that those measures are taken as quickly as possible. So again, it's more of a localized play-by-play that's sort of playing out in different ways. but I think everyone across the board is working towards ways of moving completely virtually, and agents are coming up with coronavirus disclosures and clauses and different things in their contracts to make arrangements and contingencies for all of these different things that are happening transactionally.
That's amazing. We were chatting a few minutes ago, and you left me with something that really stuck. You said there's no leading the wrong way. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the outstanding things you've seen brokerages do for the agents? Are they implementing new tools? Are they forgiving fees? Are they being as generous as possible with their resources and time? What are you seeing that's really been impressive to you?
I think particularly this week, it's been trying to find not only a new normal for every individual, whether they're a broker or an agent, but it's also particularly for brokers, it's been heartbreaking for them to close their offices and send people home. I spoke with one team leader yesterday who has, I think, 3 different offices, closed them all. And she has an agent core where some of them have actually been through the downturn, and others that are that are resilient and a little bit more confident about getting through it. And then agents that have never been through this, that are relatively new, that are heading into a recession and how to deal with that. So the biggest thing is it's psychological therapy right now. How can we get together on a call? How can we use Zoom or some other platform to talk with you about what your daily challenges are? Reach out. They're encouraging them all to reach out to their clients every single day, not with a real estate message, not with particularly information about the market, but more about from human to human. How are you doing? You're in my pipeline. I want to reach out to you and see how I can help, see how I can work with you through any of this. So human to human more than real estate to client.
So, if I said the word community to you, different brands have a different idea about how that works and what that looks like to them, right? And
right.
So, is one of these models either more fragile or more helpful in this environment? What about an agent-led brokerage, for example? The XPs and the Keller Williams of the world, compared to others. We don't have a compass here, but I wish we had something that looked like that. It's really, looks like a really quality brand, and through all the middle, what are we left with at the end of the day here?
Well, I think what's been fascinating to me, and which is what we were talking about a few minutes ago, is that you really see the stuff that culture is made of. So when you see companies and brands have very what their mission is, what their values are, what they have been growing, their messaging around the growth of the brand. It's interesting to see how they're having to fall back on those messages of value. So for example, Keller Williams is always been based on, family first, community, KW gives, a lot of these different very strong messages that have that I think are really strong for their current culture of agents to be able to fall back on. Whereas someone like, a Compass that's been really coming out with messages around technology and around innovative ways that we're doing business. And I'm thinking about, their concierge program and credit cards and health insurance, which is huge. They've been coming in to get with their agent culture around the perks and the benefits of being part of their brand. So I think what's interesting, it's not quite playing out yet, but when you see the differences of the tones of the messages coming out, I think the ones that are really standing out are the ones that, again, are about community, about giving back, about reaching out to your clients, about being in this together, and doing a lot. I saw a message with Rob Revkin, who is the CEO of Compass, say, I'm here. I'm going to be the first person on the steps of Congress to really step forward and really fight for independent contractors and those of us in real estate. Whereas I think KW's message is more, we're in this together, reach out to your communities, let's do what we can. And we're here to help you as a corporation to do what you need to do with your boots on the ground. So they're very different messages, but I think rallying, there's no wrong way. there really is no wrong way to do that. It's just rallying everybody and leading by what they feel where their hearts are right now.
You know, we're thinking about culture and how things have evolved so quickly. Some of the memes that went around, you know, you might have seen them as well, where, you know, this would be a nice place to shelter, you know, buy this house and you can shelter here and things like that. How do you know, have you seen that slow down or stop even, and people be more aware of what they're saying online and how this is going to age?
Yeah, I think there is definitely a sense that if you're a corporation that sort of doesn't really have a lot of brand guidelines around how the agents are marketing their services, what we've seen happen is, I mean, and good or bad, people handle trauma like this a little bit differently. Some of the humor, though, that's come out, like you said, which is, you know, can you see yourself quarantined here in this home? I'm ready to sell it to you. Things like that have been really insensitive. But I think for brokerages that really have a firm hand on how they're leading their comms teams, and they're going to be doing a lot less going back and having to do reputation management and damage control after the fact, if they can really come out strongly and lead strongly and say, what's happening to you in Idaho is not necessarily what's happening in California or in New York or in Washington, where people are already, you know, things are much more grave. So I think from that standpoint, it's, even though we normally manage our businesses in a very local, face-to-face way, I think part of what we said about this may not age well. When people look back on this, depending on how each region reaches peak and comes out of recovery, some of these things are not going to be aging well. So I think it's key for both agents and brokers to manage with that. How is this going to work in recovery mode? Is it going to look right?
So I was looking at some statistics from our real estate board, and during one of our last big turndowns, not in 08, but earlier than that, our real estate board went from about 3,000 agents to just over 1,000, slashing almost 2/3. How resilient do you think brokers and agents are, and what are your predictions on who makes it out the other side of this? Do you think it's going to be prolonged and serious enough that we may see some damage there, or do you think everyone will get through it just barely okay?
I was on a call yesterday. It was a virtual happy hour, which I full on encourage to get together and have your virtual happy hours. But it actually was a very industry centric virtual happy hour. Probably had about 25, 30 people on the call at one time. And that topic actually came up. And I think the really serious part of this is that we are going to lose some serious businesses, perfectly wonderful, amazing businesses and brokerages that have done everything right. They've done nothing wrong. There's nothing about, it's just the situation and it's the timing and it's locale. So I think the serious message is we're going to see some serious loss of business life through brands and corporations, and certainly some independents, because for brokerages, the profit margins have been getting leaner and leaner, and it's harder for them to reach out and ask for more from their agents. So I would predict a lot of consolidation. We're going to be seeing more resilient brokerages joining together with other brokerages to try to survive and be as resilient as possible to join together. And I think that's wonderful. I just came out with a video that I said, I think we're going to see a lot of real estate without borders. We're going to see more of the consolidation and the pulling together on top of some of the loss. I think the agents and brokerages that know that they can be resilient, that do have some reserves set aside, are really going to do well. And they're going to continue to lead with that sense of, we will get through this. And I think regionally, and I brought this up to you guys, is that I think that the way we absorb the news of what's happening in our industry is going to be very different. we are already in the United States looking at the signs of hope and light at the end of the tunnel in places like China and Italy, to be able to see how quickly recovery and even how recovery is going to start to look. Whether that's, oh my gosh, they're starting, they're closing down some of the hospitals. People are starting to go out and work again and go out into the world. We're going to be looking at that desperately for the signs of hope. Is this going to be 18 months? Is this going to be 3 months? Is this going to be 6 months? So I think once we kind of get a sense of timing, then we'll have a better sense of how can we lead people. Even yesterday, I was having conversations with brokers that are looking at this through the school term. It's like, oh my gosh, first they said it was going to be a month out of school. Now they're saying the whole year is a wash. So as a broker that now has 3 kids at home, how can I look at this through the term, a school term? Is this a 6-month thing? So we've seen people go from 6 months recovery to 18 months possibly. And that's going to make a big difference.
So looking at taking this right to the agent level, from everything you're seeing on your end, what, in your opinion, what's a winning strategy? Is it the high-tech approach? Is it the fully switched on agent? Or is it the high-touch agent that's going to be on the softer side and provide more, more communication maybe, or more, FaceTime, whatever FaceTime is right now, but FaceTime. Which one of those strategies do you think is going to prevail?
I think it's definitely going to be high touch. And I know that we have sort of virtual realities, both online and offline. And I think that, someone said this perfectly on Twitter the other day, and it was, marketing in this moment of time needs to look and sound like public service. And I think when we switch gears and we get into how do we want people to know that, how have we shown up? How as an agent have I shown up in the lives of my clients and even in my prospects? How can I start to look at all of the tools in my toolbox, whether they're tech or whether they are changing their email campaign strategies and changing the tone of their voice? We've seen a ton switching from normal email and text into video. I really want to reach out and speak to someone face to face. So it's happening incrementally, but I think the big picture is the high touch. Whether you're changing the online strategy or the offline strategy, it's face to face, it's in tone, it's in presence, it's how are you showing up with confidence? How are you helping people with their emotions tactically and strategically to get through this?
You said you're starting to see some signs of recovery. And, what's that going to look like? And how is an agent going to know when it's time to switch the messaging? Because it's probably not on to call your past clients and say, are you thinking about a move this spring? But at some point, that conversation will change. What are we going to see that's going to, give us a trigger to start to get back to that?
So I think it's already starting to happen, meaning that as we look at the federal administration, as we look at our different states, what type of financial packages and support systems and lifelines is our government going to be supplying to us as individuals and both as corporations? And by doing that, agents and brokers are in information gathering stage. So they're taking, in 2008, it was short sales and managing things with banks and mortgage companies. Right now, our mortgage, it's gathering the information and giving the information out. So as an agent, you want to be making sure that you're gathering all the federal information and state information and anything that you can, so that you are the one that is the first one to relay to your consumers, your prospects, and your clients what tools they're going to have available to make a move, do it quickly. I know we've talked a little bit about iBuyers. How is this going to land in their toolbox? Is it going to be much more important, or is it not going to be as important? The agent that's doing it right is realigning and restructuring their toolbox so that when they have all this information and as it comes out, they can be the first ones to share in their local community what they need to do. So recovery is already happening, meaning that we're getting the information from our government, we're going to put it aside, and when we're ready to start rolling out solutions to problems, we're going to be the first ones to come out of the gate and be the right kind of advisor for those things. And so it's been great.
So you chatted recently, or just a second ago, about the differences and the different models. Do you see this crisis changing the way that our industry moves forward? So after this, when we're all said and done, things are done, so we're a year out from here. Do you see that our industry changes?
100%. I think we're all going to realize, for those of us that have been worried about video or doing virtually, doing things virtually, I think that's going to be the first one out of the gate, which is we can do this virtually. We can do this as seamlessly as possible. We can be human. We don't have to hide behind marketing messages and brand messages and all that. Like, what's really real is, again, how we're showing up for people. And I think that just in that alone, us not falling back on, oh my gosh, I've got to have this amazing, marketing campaign. Really it's just about just picking up the phone and being really honest. That's the first thing I see, is getting rid of pretense, getting rid of I was thinking to myself this morning, think of all the stuff that we've been hearing from news and international news that we thought was big news, but now we look back on and we go, none of this was big news. None of it was. We'd stress out, we'd wrangle our hands together. And I think we're going to get rid of, and excuse my language, we're going to get rid of a lot of the bullshit, and we're going to get real. And I think that's an amazing silver lining in this industry. But I do think we're not going to be as afraid to do business in new ways. And I think that will force technology companies, that will force communications, that will force, I think it will just change the way we talk with one another and approach business altogether. Whether that changes all of the tools that we use on a daily basis, probably not right away, but I bet we'll start to see a race to who's going to be able to provide that end-to-end comprehensive sale to transaction solution that we can do virtually 100% with our state, federal authorities and our title and mortgage companies to make that happen. So again, I think we'll see changes in the way title does business and the way mortgage and lending happens. But again, agents and brokers are the first ones to the consumer. And I think the consumer is really going to have to trust the right information. And that's coming from agents and brokers.
I think trust is what's going to have to come out of this. And I think blockchain is really going to find a home here where you can have a secure end-to-end transaction, right? Lenders are wary of online signatures or unverified in-person verifications. And I know the title companies where you are, land registry where we are, that stuff, it's not on right now. So I think as they find their footing with that stuff, that's going to happen. So in our town now, we actually had, you mentioned iBuyer, which is a, pretty comfortable, system for mostly some spaces in the United States, maybe 10 or 15, 20 markets. Right. And we've recently had that show up in our market, and we're watching that. So that space, and we're getting our feet under us about, are they competitors? Are they, is it a service option that we're going to work with? And we haven't really fully explored all that yet. But in the face of all that, are the iBuyer companies, is the iBuyer model, are they excited or terrified by what's going on now? Is this a super opportunity for them to expand their business, or are they retreating and this is going to disappear from our radar for the next little while?
That's a really great question. I think it's a little bit early to tell, but one thing that I can say is that the argument for iBuyers really getting some momentum before the virus was that it created flexibility for sellers and buyers to be able to move quickly. It created a sense of, one and done, get it all together and be able to move quickly. So the convenience, but what we weren't seeing is we weren't seeing the numbers profitability wise showing up for either the iBuyer companies, or we were not necessarily seeing, obviously, more money in the pockets of the buyers and sellers themselves. So I think, and this is strictly, armchair quarterbacking, is that we're going to see a price fluctuations across the board, but more importantly, consumers, buyers and sellers, are going to be hurting in one way or the other. So it's going to be about financial survival. Sellers are going to want to have as much money in their pocket if they sell their home with the equity that they do have, which I think that if agents do it right and they are still those advisors, can really be very quick to show them that the full service agent is going to be able to put more money in their pocket marketing it the right way than, say, an iBuyer program would. But if it's going to be a consumer that needs to make a quick move for a job across the country, then you may see things like the iBuyer take off. So I think we're going to be at sort of a tipping point of really where that value is going to be, as the consumer actually will dictate the success of both of those. So I would say any agent needs to have it in their toolbox just in case.
It's really interesting because I feel like we're getting mixed messages, because I'm hearing at least reports of those spreads from iBuyer companies kind of decreasing. So they're kind of tightening up the numbers. So they're not 12%, 20%. They're a lot tighter than they were. And then, we just came from a conference in Niagara Falls 2 weeks ago where Rob Hahn was on stage, and he basically broke down both models for the same area. And I don't know if you saw that. And he basically showed that an iBuyer client walked away with more money in their pocket, at the end of the day. And so it's really interesting.
With an agent or with an iBuyer?
He broke down both different models, and the iBuyer model allowed them to walk away with more money in their pocket. And it was really interesting to see that difference. It was really, really interesting.
Yeah. And I still think that has a lot to do with the location, where that's going to play out regionally. I think that's going to help in some places, and I think it's going to be different in others. But I don't think there's a sense that the iBuyer is going to replace the agent or take business away at all. At all. I think it's I think again, the agents and brokers and team leaders that I know that have just embraced it and brought it in as part of their service, they're doing really well with it, because if it works out for the buyer that an iBuyer situation is great, then the agent can sit there and go, this is great, it worked out for you. But the next time you're in a situation, I'm still here for you either way. So, and they still have to get advice on how to move through it. And so agents have a really big role to play, regardless of how well it does or not.
I don't remember who it was. It might have been Brad. It might have been Rob. But one of them said, the more choice that a consumer has, the more guidance that they need to make a decision. Yeah. Right.
It sounds like something Brad. It sounds like something Brad would say. I think because I was at a conference with Brad, not one of our conferences, but I heard him speak. Someone asked him a question, and he basically said, with all this iBuying stuff that's going on, like one of the criticisms that he had was against the National Association of Realtors for not kind of coming into this conversation and guiding agents and realtors a little bit more. Like, there were so many designations and specialties. I'm a short sale specialist. I'm a this, I'm a that. Why not have like an iBuyer specialist? Like, why aren't they stepping into the conversation and guiding this value proposition a little bit more from a realtor sense? Because number one, they would help drive the choice, but they would also help to drive any of the scary regulations that may come out of this, that we may need to have some decisions on in our federal government. So they haven't been part of this conversation, and I think Brad's been kind of like they could step in a little bit more regarding how things unroll.
So we had kind of quickly, I mentioned this earlier in our pre-call, we know that Brad loves to kind of pit CEO versus CEO, and You know,
Yeah.
we love watching that happen up on stage. What's your take? Who comes out on top? You know, a year from now, who comes out on top? And I know we talked to, you know, about the type of agent, but what do you see?
I think, well, I mean, if we're talking about agents, I think agents are in a huge opportunity to come out on top. And I know that you want a name, but you know, it's going to be interesting to see. I think my personal opinion is that I think we're going to see Keller Williams come back, make a big swing back into some popularity here, especially if they get back down to their values, which is life, family, you know, community and things like that. I think they've had a long enough time to have a bunch of reserves built up. They're not relying necessarily on venture capital to sort of back, you know, Compass has been in this fast track of venture capital funding literally everything they've done without moving to really embrace the personal unique value proposition of agents. And you can kind of see the headlines of what's happened in our stock markets and their ability to go public and their ability to lean on those kinds of messages to really be the strength of the company. That's not any fault of the company. I just think it's the way that the business structure has been set out. So if I had to pick like one of the two, which I know those are the ones that get pitted together the most, I think we're going to see some longevity in Keller Williams and being able to get back to that culture of belonging and growth within helping one another. And I think that's going to be really a resurgence in that kind of messaging, which I'm grateful for.
So, Laura, I want to hit you really fast with Brad puts out a report every year about predictions for the next year. And I'm going to hold maybe your feet to the fire on this one and see what we do. So I pulled out, he made 5 or 6 predictions, and I want to see how these are going to stand out. All right. So number 1, we're going to continue to experience a supercharged housing market.
I think we are. I think real estate will be the first to come on heavy with a big recovery once we get through this. I really do, because of jobs, because of economy, because of the interest rates continuing to be low. I think that we will see, I think housing, new homes building because of the low interest rates, we'll start to see even more inflection of new things there. Hopefully more urban housing, but I think that real estate will be the first to continue to recover. We've been in recovery mode here for a while, but I think that real estate, as people sort of, real estate, stock market, real estate.
Right. Number 2, homeowner insurance will become the #1 real estate issue for 2020.
I agree. I agree with that. We've been facing a lot of different crises. Fires are particularly big here in my area. I think climate will continue to have, and I know Brad's been really big on the climate crisis. We've had a number of climate scientists speak at a number of our different events. We're going to continue to see some of places like Florida, New York, and certainly along the East Coast start dealing with more flooding issues. So I think the homeowners insurance thing is going to continue to be big. Yeah.
Brad said that we're going to see a really big IPO this year. Do you think that's still on? Or you think that gets put on the shelf?
I think that's going to be put on the shelf.
Put on the shelf. All right.
Yeah.
And last one, Realogy and the iBuyer space will see a massive expansion in all areas from all players.
I think that's probably still true.
Probably still true.
I do. Yeah. I think to remain competitive, yeah, they'll need to make sure their agent core is well versed in iBuyer.
It makes the most sense almost where if the market becomes illiquid, right? You just can't find a buyer for your house, but I need to move. Something in my life has changed.
Mm-hmm.
That may be the piece of the puzzle that picks things up in a bigger way. They were prepared almost. I'm still both ways on this. I'm not sure how they can get the margins, but if they have deep enough pockets, maybe they can make that happen. Is that where we're going to see that space sort of not a
Which space?
retraction in the capital? They're actually going to double down and bring more money into that space?
I think it's a little early to tell. I think where the funds will be available, they will. I think we'll start to see some change, rapid changes and decisions in that. But I think it's really early to kind of tell. Yeah.
Matt,
I was just going to ask, what's up with Vegas? Is Vegas still on? Has it been postponed?
So it has not been postponed. We are still technically on for Vegas. We have about 4 to 5 more months.
That's Inman Connect, Las Vegas.
Inman Connect, Las Vegas is still on, but we obviously are gauging this day by day, and we have contingency plans that were hybrid contingency plans. We have it all, but right now we're still a go.
Awesome.
Yeah. Either way,
Perfect.
we're going to have a good show because it's exciting.
It's always a good show. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's everything that we've got right now for you. We thank you so much for taking the time, especially with everything that's going on, around you. We really do appreciate the time that you spent with us. And if anyone has any other questions, we'll post your info and we'll let them go from there.
Yeah. And again, I just thank you so much for having me. I know that Brad probably, wishes that he could have been here and been able to, answer these questions, because these kinds of things do weigh heavy on his heart. So we wish you guys all the best, and we'll continue to, keep you posted. So if you want to do any of these calls again, let me know. I'm happy to jump in and but I wish you all the best of health. Wash your hands, stay at home, do all that you got to do. And thanks again.
Thanks,
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Take care, you guys. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.